Hey there, travelers. Before we dive into today's story, drop a comment below telling us where you're tuning in from. Now let's begin our journey into the unknown. The sirens started at 11:47 p.m. I'd been working at Facility Blackthorn for 4 months, and in all that time, I'd never heard those particular alarms. Not the standard lockdown wail, but something deeper. Something that made your chest vibrate and your teeth ache. The kind of sound that reaches into your brainstem and screams danger. My radio crackled. Captain Kaplan's voice came through, tight and clipped. All personnel to Intake Bay 3, Level Red Transfer Protocol. This is not a drill. I was halfway through my rounds in C Block when the call came. The coffee in my thermos was still warm. I'd been thinking about calling my sister back in Portland, returning the voicemail I'd been avoiding for 3 weeks. Normal thoughts. The kind you have when your job is walking the same concrete hallways every night, checking the same locks, writing the same reports. Level Red Protocol meant something extraordinary was coming through those doors. I'd never seen one before. The storm outside had been building all evening. Montana weather in October, unpredictable and mean. Rain hammered the reinforced doors at ground level, and even 4 stories underground, you could hear wind howling through the ventilation system. It made the facility feel alive, breathing. I reached Intake Bay 3 at the same time as Greg Adler. He'd been at Blackthorn for 15 years, longer than anyone else on staff. Former Marine, built like he could still pass basic training, but his hands were shaking as he checked his equipment belt. "You ever see a level red?" I asked. Greg didn't look at me. "Once, 6 years ago." He paused, jaw working like he was chewing words he didn't want to swallow. "The prisoner died 3 days after arrival, but those 3 days..." He shook his head. "Just follow protocol, Duncan. Don't improvise." Captain Kaplan stood at the bay entrance, flanked by 8 other guards I recognized and 4 I didn't. The strangers wore different uniforms, black tactical gear with patches I couldn't identify. Religious symbols were stitched into their shoulder plates. Crosses, stars of David, crescents, a dozen faiths represented in thread and Kevlar. Kaplan was a stocky man, 50-something, who'd run Blackthorn with efficient detachment since before I arrived. I'd never seen him sweat, never seen his hands shake, never seen him look scared. He looked scared now. "Listen up," Kaplan said, voice cutting through the storm noise and alarm echo. "We're receiving a single prisoner. Classification 666, maximum containment. You will not speak to him. You will not respond if he speaks to you. You will not make prolonged eye contact. Observation and reporting only. Understood?" We nodded. Someone behind me whispered, 6666? They actually classified someone with that number? Kaplan continued. "This prisoner has been in federal custody for 18 months. Multiple facilities. Multiple incidents. Blackthorn is his final placement." The way he said final made it sound like a death sentence. "He will be housed in D Block, Cell 7. The rest of D Block has been cleared." D Block. The oldest section of Blackthorn, built in the 1950s when the facility served a different purpose. Before it became a prison for people the government didn't know what to do with. The possessed, the psychologically shattered, the ones who'd failed every exorcism, every treatment, every rehabilitation attempt. I didn't believe in possession. I'd worked in psychiatric security before this, seen people in psychotic breaks, dissociative states, drug-induced psychosis. The human mind could fracture in spectacular ways without needing supernatural explanations. But I'd be lying if I said Blackthorn didn't test that skepticism. Things happened here. Cameras caught shadows in empty corridors. Recordings picked up voices in unoccupied cells. Guards reported temperature drops, equipment failures, feelings of being watched by something that wasn't there. I told myself it was psychology. Old building, isolated location, working with disturbed people. Of course, your mind played tricks. But I never quite convinced myself. The bay doors opened with a hydraulic hiss. Cold air rushed in, carrying rain and something else. A smell like burnt incense, but sharper, chemical. The convoy rolled in slowly. 3 armored trucks, unmarked. Black paint slick with rain. Between them, 2 helicopters had landed on the surface pad, their rotors still spinning, creating a deafening thunder that shook the walls. The center truck backed up to the intake platform. Its rear doors opened and 6 guards emerged first. They moved with military precision, weapons drawn but pointed down. Not tasers, not riot guns. Actual firearms, which violated every protocol I'd learned. Then, they brought him out. The container was reinforced steel, standing upright like a coffin. Small window at head height, heavily tinted. As they wheeled it past us, I caught a glimpse through the glass. Eyes, completely black, no white, no iris distinction, just solid darkness reflecting the fluorescent lights. The prisoner inside stood motionless, thin build, medium height, head completely bald. Even from 6 feet away, I could see his skin was covered in markings. Not prison tattoos. These were intricate flowing scripts in languages I didn't recognize. They covered every visible inch, neck, scalp, hands. He wore a plain gray jumpsuit. His hands were bound in front of him with restraints I'd never seen before. Not metal. Some kind of composite material with symbols etched into the surface. The chains connecting the cuffs were short, forcing his hands together like prayer. But it was his stillness that struck me. Everyone else was moving. Guards shouting coordinates, equipment being repositioned, rain hammering down. The prisoner stood perfectly still inside his container, eyes forward, not reacting to anything. As they rolled him past our position, his head turned. Slowly, deliberately. Those black eyes fixed on me, through me, and something in my chest went cold. I wanted to look away. Every instinct screamed to break eye contact. But I couldn't. It felt like falling into deep water, that moment of vertigo before submersion. Then Captain Kaplan stepped between us, blocking the line of sight. "Move along, Duncan. You're assigned to D-Block tonight. Get familiar with the new setup." My legs felt weak. I nodded, not trusting my voice. The container was wheeled toward the main elevator, the only one that descended to D-Block. I watched it disappear behind reinforced doors. The last thing I saw was those eyes, still watching me through the tinted window. Greg grabbed my shoulder. "You good?" "Yeah," I lied. "Just cold." "That wasn't cold," Greg said quietly. "That was smart. Your body telling you to run." He released my shoulder. "But we don't get to run. We get paid to stay." D-Block was colder than the rest of Blackthorn. Always had been. Something about its position, the deepest level, built into bedrock, minimal ventilation. Tonight it felt like a freezer. The main corridor stretched 80 feet, lined with 8 cells on each side. 15 were empty now. 1 was occupied. Cell 7. The door was different from the others, newer, reinforced steel with a small observation window at eye level, glass 3 inches thick. Symbols were welded into the metal surface. I recognized some as religious, others completely foreign. I stood at the checkpoint desk, 30 feet from the cell. Standard protocol. 1 guard on duty. Cameras recording every angle. Panic button within reach. Simple job. Watch. Report. Don't engage. The monitors showed multiple views of Cell 7's interior. Bare concrete. Bed bolted to the floor. Toilet and sink in the corner. Single overhead light that couldn't be turned off. The prisoner sat on the bed, hands resting on his knees. Posture perfect, staring at the wall. Or at the camera hidden in the wall. Hard to tell. I'd been staring at the monitors for 20 minutes when Captain Kaplan appeared behind me, silent as a ghost. "Report," he said. No movement, no attempts at communication. Subject appears calm. Kaplan grunted. He was looking at the prisoner through the desk monitors, not the direct view down the corridor, like he didn't want to see him with naked eyes. "You read his file?" Kaplan asked. "Classified. I don't have clearance." "Good. Keep it that way." Kaplan shifted his weight. "This one's different, Duncan. The others in this facility, they're sick, traumatized. Broken people who need help we can't provide. But this one..." He trailed off, searching for words. "Just follow the rules. Don't talk to him. Don't listen if he talks to you. And for the love of everything, don't believe a word he says." "What does he say?" Kaplan looked at me directly. His eyes were bloodshot, exhausted. "That he's been alive for 10,000 years. That he's witnessed every major event in human history. That he's watched civilizations rise and fall like waves on a beach." I kept my expression neutral. Standard messianic delusion, not uncommon in... He knows things, Kaplan interrupted. Details. Historical facts that aren't in books. Descriptions of places that match archaeological discoveries made after his arrest. Languages that linguists can't identify but recognize patterns in. He leaned closer. 3 different psychiatrists evaluated him. All 3 requested transfers within a week. One of them stopped practicing entirely. What convinced them? He told them things about themselves, private things, memories they'd never shared. Kaplan straightened up. So follow the rules, Duncan. Your curiosity is why you're good at this job. It's also why you're dangerous to yourself here. He left without another word. I sat alone with the monitors and the silence. At 1:15 a.m., the prisoner stood up. He didn't stretch or pace like inmates normally do, just rose smoothly and walked to the cell door. He stood there, hands at his sides, staring at the observation window, staring at me. I was 30 feet away. The window was small. No way he could see me clearly through that distance and reinforced glass. But I felt seen. Completely. Like standing naked under surgical lights. My radio was silent. Cameras were recording. Protocol said I should log the movement and continue observation. Don't engage. But something pulled me forward. I stood, walked down the corridor. Each step felt heavier than the last, like moving through water. The temperature dropped with every foot. By the time I reached the observation window, I could see my breath. The prisoner stood on the other side of the glass. This close, I could see the tattoos clearly. They weren't static images. They were text. Dense, flowing scripts covering every inch of visible skin. The languages shifted. Hebrew, Arabic, something that looked like Sanskrit. Others I couldn't begin to identify. His eyes were worse up close. Solid black, yes, but not empty. Depth in them. Like looking into wells that had no bottom. When he spoke, his voice came through the steel door as clearly as if there were no barrier. Frank Duncan. My blood froze. I hadn't told him my name. It wasn't on my uniform. The nameplate just said, Guard 7. 39 months in psychiatric security at Riverside Hospital in Oregon, he continued. His voice was wrong. Multiple tones layered together like a choir singing in unison. You left because you stopped believing you were helping people. You came here because isolation seemed honest. At least prisoners know they're prisoners. I should have walked away. Should have radioed Kaplan. Should have done anything except stand there. But I couldn't move. You want to understand, the prisoner said. Not a question. Statement of fact. Every guard here wants to survive their shift. Clock in, clock out. Don't think too hard. But you want to understand what you're looking at. What this place really contains. His head tilted slightly. The motion was too smooth. Inhuman. I can show you, he said. 10,000 years of human history. I walked through Babylon when its walls still stood. I watched Rome burn. I stood in the crowds when prophets spoke and when tyrants fell. I've seen everything, Frank Duncan, everything. You're delusional, I said. My voice sounded weak, uncertain. Am I? The prisoner smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Tomorrow night, return. I'll prove it. I'll tell you about Salem, about the real trials, the ones the books don't mention, the smell of green wood burning, the sounds hysterical women make when their neighbors condemn them, the exact words Bridget Bishop whispered before the noose tightened. He stepped back from the door. The temperature rose immediately. You'll come back, he said with certainty, because you need to know if I'm insane, or if I'm telling the truth. The overhead light flickered. Once, twice. When it steadied, the prisoner was sitting on his bed again. Same position as before. Hands on knees, staring at nothing. I backed away slowly, returned to the desk. Logged the interaction with shaking hands. Subject spoke to guard. Standard delusional content. No threat. But my hands wouldn't stop trembling. And I knew. Despite every protocol, every warning, every instinct screaming danger, I would return tomorrow night. Because he was right. I needed to understand. The storm outside intensified. Lightning flashed through ventilation grates somewhere far above. Thunder rolled through the bedrock. On the monitor, the prisoner's lips moved silently. The tattoos on his arms shifted in the light. For just a moment, they formed an image I recognized. A map of Jerusalem. Ancient Jerusalem. I blinked, and the image was gone. Just random scripts again. My shift ended at 6 a.m. I didn't sleep when I got home. I spent the day researching Salem, reading trial transcripts, looking at historical records, wondering if a man locked in a cell could possibly know more about history than every book ever written, and wondering what it meant if he did. Night came too quickly. I returned to D Block at 11 p.m., an hour before my official shift. The checkpoint was empty. I had the block to myself. Cell 7's monitors showed the prisoner in the same position, waiting. I walked down the corridor, stopped at the observation window. He was already standing at the door. "You came back," he said. That layered voice, like multiple people speaking as one. "Of course you did." "How do you know my name?" I asked. "I know all names. I heard Caesar cry out Brutus's name. I heard Mary call for Jesus as he died. I've heard millions of names spoken and forgotten. Yours is just another sound in an endless echo." The tattoos on his arms began to move. Not metaphorically. Actually shifting beneath his skin like living things. They rearranged into flowing text, then images, then text again. "You want proof," he said. "So let me give you something to research, something to verify." He pressed one hand against the glass. The symbols on his palm formed a specific pattern. Salem, 1692. The execution of Bridget Bishop, June 19th. The rope was new hemp, bought from merchant named Thomas Greenwood. His name appears in one record only, a customs document archived in Boston. The wood of the gallows was oak, cut from the north side of Gallows Hill where trees grew crooked from the wind. And Bridget's last words, the ones never recorded, were these: "You kill me today, but you'll wake with it tomorrow." He pulled his hand back. "Research it. Verify what you can. Then tomorrow night, I'll tell you about Salem. About what it felt like to stand in that crowd. To smell fear, sweat, and burning. To watch neighbors murder neighbors because fear is more contagious than any plague." His black eyes held mine. "And after Salem, I'll tell you about Vlad Tepes. About dining in his palace while corpses rotted on stakes outside. About what makes a man choose to be remembered as a monster." The temperature plummeted. My breath came out in clouds. 10,000 years, Frank Duncan. I'll share them with you, one story at a time. But you must choose to listen. No one can force you to hear truth. He turned and walked back to his bed. Sat down. Resumed his vigil, staring at nothing. I stood at that window for 5 more minutes, watching him breathe. Watching the tattoos settle into stillness on his skin. Then I went back to the desk and began taking notes. Detailed notes. Everything he'd said. Every claim. Every specific fact. Tomorrow I would verify what I could, and tomorrow night I would return. Because he was right about one thing. I needed to understand, even if understanding destroyed me. I spent the next day buried in research. My apartment was small. Studio efficiency in a complex outside Red Creek, the kind of place where neighbors never made eye contact. Perfect for someone who worked nights and slept through daylight. But that day, I didn't sleep. I sat at my laptop with coffee going cold beside me, searching through digital archives, historical databases, obscure academic papers, looking for Thomas Greenwood, looking for customs records from 1692 Boston, looking for any mention of rope purchases, gallows construction, execution details that matched what the prisoner had said. 3 hours in, I found it. Boston Custom House records, digitized in 2019 as part of a colonial trade documentation project, buried in a PDF that was mostly unreadable, water damage, faded ink, archaic handwriting. But there, on page 247 of 890, partially visible, Thomas Greenwood, merchant, hemp rope, 60 eft, delivered Salem, June 15th, 1692. My hands trembled as I zoomed in on the document. The date was 4 days before Bridget Bishop's execution. The quantity matched what would be needed for a hanging. It could be coincidence. The prisoner could have accessed these records somehow before his imprisonment, could have studied obsessively, memorized thousands of historical details. But the document had only been digitized 5 years ago, and according to Captain Kaplan, the prisoner had been in custody for 18 months, moved between facilities, no internet access, no outside communication. I kept searching, found an archaeological survey from 2021, examination of Gallows Hill. The report included wood analysis of fragments found at the execution site. Oak. Growth rings suggesting trees from the northern exposure of the hill, where wind patterns created asymmetrical development. Exactly what he'd said. I closed my laptop, stared at the blank screen. My reflection looked hollow, exhausted. Either I was being played by someone with impossible access to obscure historical data, or I was dealing with something that shouldn't exist. Both options terrified me. That night I arrived at D Block 30 minutes early. Greg was finishing his shift, logging final reports. He glanced up when I entered, studied my face. "You look terrible, Duncan. Didn't sleep well. Because of him?" Greg nodded toward the monitors showing Cell 7. I didn't answer. Greg stood gathering his equipment. "Listen to me, really listen. I've worked here 15 years, seen a lot of prisoners, violent ones, broken ones so far gone they didn't remember their own names. But that one?" He pointed at the screen. "He's different, not because of what he says, because of how he makes you feel when he says it." "What do you mean?" "Like you're standing at the edge of something vast, something you can't see the bottom of." Greg shouldered his bag. 3 guards before you worked D Block after he arrived. First one requested transfer after 2 weeks. Second one lasted 5 days. Third one, he paused. Found him in his car in the parking lot. Engine running, garage door closed. They got to him in time, but he wouldn't talk about what happened. Just kept saying, "He showed me too much." My mouth went dry. Showed him what? That's the thing. He never said. Just repeated that phrase over and over. Greg moved toward the exit, stopped at the doorway. "You're smart, Duncan. Use that brain to stay safe. Some knowledge isn't worth having." He left me alone with the monitors and the silence. The prisoner sat motionless on his bed, waiting. I lasted 10 minutes before walking down the corridor to Cell 7. He was already at the door when I arrived, like he'd known the exact moment I would approach. "You researched," he said. "Not a question. I found some of what you mentioned." "Some?" His head tilted. "You found Thomas Greenwood's customs record. You found the wood analysis. You verified everything you could access. And now you're wondering if this is an elaborate trick, or if you're standing before something impossible. How do you know what you did today?" The prisoner's smile was thin. "Because that's what anyone with intelligence would do. Verify, question, seek rational explanations before accepting irrational truth." He pressed his palm against the glass. "But you came back, despite your fear, despite knowing this violates every protocol. You came back because curiosity is stronger than self-preservation in people like us." People like us. Observers, witnesses, those who need to understand rather than simply exist. His black eyes reflected the fluorescent light. "I've met thousands like you across millennia. Scribes who risked death to preserve forbidden knowledge, philosophers who questioned gods, scientists who dismantled comfortable lies. You're not special, Frank Duncan. You're just another iteration of a pattern as old as consciousness itself." The temperature dropped. My breath misted. "Salem," he said. "You want to hear about Salem, so let me take you there. Close your eyes and listen. Really listen." I should have walked away, should have ended this. Instead, I closed my eyes. His voice changed, became singular, human, almost gentle. August 1692, Salem Village, Massachusetts. You have to understand, it wasn't a town, not really. A collection of farms, a meeting house, dirt roads that turned to mud when it rained. And that summer, it rained constantly. Salem, 1692. I was standing in the crowd the day they brought Bridget Bishop to trial. The meeting house was packed, Maybe 200 people crammed into a space meant for half that. The heat was suffocating. Bodies pressed together, everyone sweating through their clothes. The smell was overwhelming. Unwashed bodies, rotting teeth, fear. Bridget was already tied when they brought her in, hands bound behind her back, dress torn at the shoulder from rough handling. She was 58 years old, but looked older. Hard life, hard work. But her eyes, they weren't broken. Not yet. The magistrate sat at a table at the front. John Hathorne did most of the questioning. He wasn't interested in truth. He was interested in confession. Every question was designed to trap her, to force her into admitting something. Anything. Bridget Bishop, you stand accused of witchcraft. What covenant have you made with the devil? She spit at his feet. That got a reaction from the crowd. Gasps, murmurs. Someone near me whispered, "The devil's whore shows herself." I was curious about the process, the mechanics of mass hysteria. So I watched faces instead of the trial. Watched a woman I'd seen buying bread 3 days earlier, now contorting her face in mock agony, claiming Bridget's specter was pinching her. The accusers were mostly young women. Ann Putnam, Mercy Lewis, Mary Walcott. They'd discovered something powerful, that their words could destroy. That, in a community where they had no real authority, they could command attention through accusation, and they were intoxicated by it. They screamed, fell to the ground, claimed invisible hands were choking them. Hathorne ate it up. Every convulsion, every cry he treated as evidence. Bridget never confessed. They took her away that day, locked her in Salem jail. The building was just a wooden shed with a door that didn't close properly. I walked past it later that night. Heard her crying inside. Not loud sobs, quiet, defeated whimpering. June 19th, execution day. Clear sky, unusual for that summer. They'd built the gallows on the hill, crude construction, just a platform and a crossbeam. The wood was fresh-cut oak, still bleeding sap in the heat. They brought Bridget up in a cart, hands still bound. She'd been in that shed for 3 weeks. They hadn't fed her much. Her dress hung loose on a frame that had shrunk. The crowd was smaller than trial day. Maybe 60 people, but the core accusers were there, front and center, making sure their work was finished. The rope was thick hemp, new, stiff. When they put it around her neck, it scratched her skin, left a red mark before it even tightened. They asked if she had final words. She looked at the accusers, at Ann Putnam, who was 14 years old, at Mercy Lewis, who'd been a servant in Bridget's house years before. "You kill me today," Bridget said. Her voice was steady, stronger than it had been in the trial. "But you'll wake with it tomorrow, and every day after, and when your time comes, you'll remember this moment and know what you are." Ann Putnam smiled. Actually smiled. They pushed Bridget off the platform. The drop wasn't long enough for a clean break. She strangled. Body twisting, feet kicking air, hands bound so she couldn't reach up to pull at the rope. It took 4 minutes. I counted. The crowd watched in silence. When her body finally went still, someone said, "The devil's left her." Like that explained anything. They buried her in a shallow grave nearby. Didn't mark it, didn't say prayers, just covered her with dirt and walked away. I stayed for a while after everyone left, watched ants discover the disturbed earth, wondered about the mechanics of belief, how conviction can override obvious reality, how fear can transform neighbors into executioners. 19 more people died that year. The accusers got bolder with each success. Then winter came. Accusations slowed. By spring, the trials ended. No apologies, no justice, just silence. That's Salem. Not supernatural, not demonic. Just humans discovering they could kill with words and call it righteousness. I opened my eyes. The prisoner was still at the door, hand against the glass. His expression was unreadable. "That's what I witnessed," he said. "Not magic, not possession. Just people choosing to believe comfortable lies because truth required moral courage they didn't possess." My throat was dry. "You talk about it like you were reporting on weather." I was. I am. I observe. I don't judge. He pulled his hand back. But if you want judgment, consider this. I've watched thousands of executions across centuries. Salem wasn't special. It was just another Tuesday in human history. I returned to the desk, logged the interaction. My hands were shaking again. Over the next week, I fell into a rhythm. Day shifts spent researching, verifying, trying to find rational explanations. Night shifts listening to stories that should be impossible. Wallachia, 1462. Târgoviște, capital of Wallachia. I arrived in spring when Vlad Tepes was at the height of his power. The fortress was impressive. Stone walls, towers, defensive positions. But approaching from the south, you saw something else first. The forest. Not trees, stakes, thousands of them, 20 feet tall, arranged in concentric circles around the fortress. Each one topped with a body in various stages of decay, some fresh, some reduced to skeletons and rags. The smell carried for miles, sweet and rotten. Birds circled constantly. I gained entry claiming to be a merchant from Constantinople. Vlad was interested in trade connections, intelligence from Ottoman territories. He granted me an audience. The great hall was surprisingly modest. Stone floor, long table, tapestries that had seen better days. Vlad sat at the head of the table eating. He was young, 31, but looked older. Pale skin, dark circles under his eyes, long black hair pulled back. "Sit," he said in decent Turkish. "Eat." I sat. The food was excellent. Roasted pork, fresh bread, wine from local vineyards. The windows behind Vlad offered a perfect view of the forest of steaks. We ate in silence for a while. Then Vlad looked up. "You're staring at them," he said, gesturing toward the window. "Hard not to. Most visitors vomit, or pray, or make excuses to leave quickly." He cut another piece of pork. "You're just curious. About what? Whether I'm a monster? Whether I enjoy it?" He smiled. It didn't warm his face. "Everyone wants to understand Vlad the Impaler. What makes him kill so many in such specific ways? Do you enjoy it?" He considered the question seriously. "No. It's work. Necessary work, but tedious. Do you know how long it takes to impale 20,000 invaders? The logistics? The manpower?" He drank wine. "But the effect is remarkable. Word spreads. Sultan Mehmed sends armies, and they see the forest. Half desert before crossing the border. The rest fight poorly because they're already terrified. Fear is strategy. The only strategy that matters. Love is worthless. People loved my father, and they betrayed him. Respect means nothing. I respected the boyars, and they killed my brother. But fear?" He gestured with his knife at the window. "Fear is honest. Fear keeps people obedient." "At what cost?" "Cost?" He laughed. It sounded wrong, too high-pitched. "I've already paid every cost. My father buried alive. My brother blinded and buried alive. Me, sent as hostage to the Turks at 11 years old. Learned what men can do to children in Ottoman dungeons." His expression hardened. "So I became worse than my tormentors. If the world is cruelty, be the cruelest." I asked him about nightmares. He stared at me for a long moment, then said, "I don't dream anymore. Haven't for years. When I close my eyes, there's nothing. Just black. Maybe that's worse than nightmares. Maybe nightmares would mean I'm still human enough to feel remorse." He died 14 years later. Killed by his own men, tired of his brutality. They cut off his head, sent it to the Sultan as proof. The real Vlad was neither monster nor hero, just a traumatized man who learned that cruelty guarantees attention when kindness guarantees obscurity. The Red Sea. I was with the Egyptian army pursuing escaping Hebrews. Not by choice. I'd been traveling with merchants who got conscripted into the campaign. Pharaoh Rameses wanted his slaves back, wanted to make an example. We chased them to Pi-Hahiroth, edge of the Red Sea. They were trapped. Water in front, mountains on either side, army behind. Then the wind started. Not normal wind. It came from the east, constant, unnatural, strong enough to make walking difficult, and it didn't stop. kept blowing for hours. The sea began to change, water pulling back from shore. Slowly at first, then faster, exposing seabed that hadn't seen air in centuries. The mud was gray-black, thick, smelled like sulfur and rotting fish. Creatures flopped in the shallows. Fish, eels, things I didn't have names for, all dying in the sudden air. The Hebrews started crossing. Moses at the front, staff raised. But it wasn't magic. It was timing. Someone understanding weather patterns, tidal forces, wind effects, knowing exactly when to move. I watched the crossing take hours. Thousands of people. Children crying, elderly struggling in the mud, animals panicking. Ramesses ordered pursuit. Officers hesitated. You could see fear in their eyes. But orders are orders. Chariots went first, wheels immediately stuck in mud. Horses screamed, broke legs trying to pull free. Soldiers on foot followed, sinking to their knees with each step. I stayed on shore, watched from a ridge. The wind stopped, not gradually, suddenly, like someone closed a door. The water came back, not a wave, a collapse. Both walls falling inward simultaneously. The sound was deafening. The army disappeared. Thousands of men, hundreds of chariots, gone in seconds. Water churned brown with displaced mud. Bodies surfaced briefly, then were pulled under. The sea settled within minutes. Smooth surface. No evidence anyone had tried to cross. Moses claimed divine intervention. The Hebrews believed him. The story became legend. Doubters were ignored or silenced. That's how history works. Winners write narratives. Losers drown. Babylon, 539 BC. Babylon was magnificent before it fell. Walls so thick you could race chariots on top. Gardens hanging from terraces, fed by aqueducts that seemed impossible. Libraries containing knowledge from a dozen conquered nations. I was there when Cyrus the Great surrounded the city. Not as soldier, as observer. Wanted to see what happened when an unstoppable force met an unmovable object. The siege was strange. No assault. Cyrus just waited. His army camped outside while Babylon sat secure behind walls that had never been breached. Inside, people were confident. Months of supplies. Wells that never ran dry. They threw festivals while the Persian army starved outside. But Cyrus wasn't trying to break the walls. He was diverting the river. The Euphrates flowed under Babylon's walls through channels. Cyrus had engineers redirect the river upstream, slowly, quietly. While Babylon celebrated, he was draining their moat. October night, clear sky. The river had slowed to a trickle. Persian soldiers waded through the channels, entered the city unopposed. They didn't announce their presence, just spread through streets silently. By the time Babylon realized they'd been invaded, Persians controlled key positions. No battle, no heroic last stand, just gates opening from inside, betrayed by people tired of Nabonidus's rule, ready for new management. I was near the Hanging Gardens when soldiers arrived. They weren't there to destroy. Cyrus wanted the city intact. But chaos erupted anyway. There was a young scribe in the library. Couldn't have been more than 20. When Persian soldiers entered, he started grabbing tablets. Clay records of astronomy, mathematics, trade records, trying to save them. I helped him, carried tablets to a cart he'd pulled into the courtyard. He was crying, working frantically. "This is everything," he kept saying. "Centuries of knowledge. If it burns, it's gone forever." A Persian soldier entered the courtyard, saw us with the cart, drew his sword. The scribe stood in front of the tablets. "These are valuable. Your king will want..." The soldier killed him. The quick thrust through the chest. Efficient. The cart tipped over. Tablets crashed to stone floor. Hundreds of hours of observation, calculation, recording, shattered into fragments. I stayed with the scribe while he died. Took maybe 5 minutes. He spent them whispering about the tablets, asking me to save them, still believing knowledge mattered more than life. Some of the library survived. Cyrus preserved it for his own scholars, but half was lost, accidentally, carelessly. Knowledge can outlast empires, but it requires someone to protect it. And protectors die easy. Berlin, 1936. The Olympics were theater. The Olympics. Magnificent, precise theater designed to show the world that Germany was strong, orderly, superior. I watched from the crowd at Olympic Stadium. 100,000 people. Sea of red banners with black swastikas. The energy was intoxicating. Thousands of voices chanting in unison, arms raised in salute. Jesse Owens ran like he was proving something to the universe. 4 gold medals. Every victory a quiet refutation of everything the stadium represented. Hitler sat in his box, watching. I was close enough to see his expression. Not rage when Owens won. Calculation. He was measuring reaction, gauging how to spin this later. Near me sat a young man, maybe 25, wearing Hitler Youth uniform. He cried during the opening ceremony. Not sad tears, pride tears. We talked briefly between events. He told me about his life before the party, unemployed, hungry, ashamed. Then I joined, he said. Suddenly, I belonged. I mattered. I had purpose. What purpose? Making Germany great, protecting our people, building the future. His eyes shone. The Führer sees us, all of us. We're not invisible anymore. I asked if he believed in the racial theories, the hierarchies, the superiority claims. He hesitated. I believe in Germany. In us being strong enough that no one can hurt us again. If that means being superior. He shrugged. Maybe. And if being superior means hurting others, then we hurt them before they hurt us. No hesitation that time. I encountered him once more. Poland, 1939. He was a soldier by then, burning a village suspected of harboring partisans, women and children screaming. He didn't remember me, but I remembered him, the proud young man crying at the Olympics, now covered in soot and blood, methodically setting houses on fire. He died 3 weeks later. Russian bullet. Left a widow and son back in Munich. But that young man, he never thought he was evil. Right up to the moment he died, he believed he was protecting his country, making Germany great. That's the truth about Berlin, about the Olympics, about everything that followed. It wasn't monsters doing monstrous things. It was ordinary people choosing to believe comfortable lies, choosing belonging over morality, choosing purpose over conscience. And I watched, took notes, remembered every detail. Because humans keep doing it. Different flags, different slogans, same pattern. Each night, I verified what I could. Found archaeological evidence matching his descriptions, historical records confirming obscure details. Greg stopped talking to me, would leave reports on the desk without making eye contact. Captain Kaplan called me into his office after 2 weeks. "You're spending too much time with the prisoner," he said. "I'm following protocol, observation and reporting. You're having conversations. Multiple guards have reported seeing you at the cell door, standing there for hours." Kaplan leaned forward. "Listen carefully. This prisoner is dangerous, not physically, psychologically. He finds what you care about and uses it against you. 3 psychiatrists, Duncan, 3 trained professionals couldn't handle him. What happened to them? Dr. Patricia Hammond, nervous breakdown, committed voluntarily to psychiatric care, still there. Dr. James Freeman, quit psychiatry entirely, sells insurance now, refuses to discuss the case. Dr. Wandelaw." He paused. "Active treatment for delusional disorder. Claims she can hear voices from the past. That history is speaking through her." My blood went cold. "The prisoner told them things," Kaplan continued. "Made them question everything. Their understanding of reality, their place in history." He stood. "You're doing good work here, Duncan. Don't throw it away because you're curious about a manipulative sociopath who memorized history books." I nodded. Agreed to reduce my interactions. Went right back that night. The prisoner smiled when I arrived at his cell. "Captain Kaplan spoke to you." "You know he did." "Of course. You're here anyway. Because you're already too deep. You've verified too much. Found too many impossible correlations. He stood, approached the glass. And now you're wondering, if everything he says is true, what does that mean for everything you thought you knew? What do you want from me? Want? He laughed, that layered sound, like multiple voices in harmony. I don't want anything, Frank Duncan. I'm offering knowledge, truth, perspective that comes from watching civilizations rise and fall like tides. In exchange for what? Nothing. I'm imprisoned regardless of what you do. But... He pressed his palm against the glass. The tattoos on his skin rearranged into a new pattern, a map. There's something I can give you. Proof beyond words, beyond verification. What proof? The Seal of Solomon, the ring. It's real, Frank, hidden in Salem. I can tell you exactly where. My heart hammered. Why would you tell me that? Because you'll never truly believe without touching something impossible. And because his black eyes held mine. I'm tired of this prison, this body, this limited perspective. The ring can change that. How? Come back tomorrow. One more story first, the most important one. Then I'll tell you about the ring, about what it does, about the choice you'll have to make. He returned to his bed, conversation over. I stood at that window for 5 more minutes, trying to understand what I was being offered, and what it might cost me. Tomorrow would be the last night, the last story. Then everything would change. I just didn't know how yet. The next night, I arrived early again. Couldn't help myself. Couldn't. The prisoner was waiting at the door. Like always. Final story, he said. Then I'll tell you about the ring. I nodded. His voice dropped, became almost reverent. The crucifixion. You want to know what it was really like? I was in Jerusalem for Passover. The city was packed, thousands of pilgrims, Romans everywhere, nervous about riots. I heard about the trial. This rabbi from Galilee who'd been causing trouble, claimed to be the Messiah. Pontius Pilate wanted him gone. Morning of the execution, I followed the procession. 3 men being crucified. Jesus was in the middle, carrying his crossbeam. He'd already been flogged, back torn to shreds, bleeding through his robe. The walk to Golgotha was maybe half a mile, uphill, rocky ground. Jesus fell twice. Roman soldiers kicked him back up. Golgotha, place of the skull, small hill outside the city walls. The ground was stained dark. I watched them work. Crucifixion is carpentry. Efficiency. They laid him on the crossbeam, positioned his wrists. The nails were iron, 6 inches long. The sound when they drove them through, bone cracking, tissue tearing. Jesus screamed. Everyone screams. They hoisted the crossbeam onto the vertical post, his feet next. 1 nail through both. More screaming. Then silence. Just ragged breathing. The crowd thinned quickly. Crucifixion takes hours. I stayed. Watched him struggle to breathe, pushing up on the nail through his feet to inflate his lungs, then collapsing. Over and over. His mother was there, Mary. She stood at the base of the cross with a few others. Just stood there, watching her son die slowly. I moved closer. Heard her whispering, "Forgive me for bringing you into this world." Around noon, the sky darkened. Clouds rolled in. Temperature dropped. Jesus spoke a few times, mostly incomprehensible. Thirst, pain, something about being forsaken. 3 o'clock. He stopped pushing up to breathe. Body went slack, head dropped forward. A Roman soldier checked, confirmed death, thrust a spear into his side. Blood and fluid poured out. They took him down before sunset. Some followers claimed the body, wrapped it, carried it away. I stayed on Golgotha after everyone left, looked at the 3 crosses. Blood on wood, crows circling. That was it. No earthquakes, no temple veil tearing, just a man dying the way Romans had killed thousands before him. But 3 days later, the stories started. Resurrection, empty tomb. I investigated. Never found conclusive evidence either way. What I did find, his followers believed, genuinely, They went from hiding in fear to preaching openly, even when it meant death. Something changed them. Maybe he did rise. Maybe mass delusion. Maybe they lied for a cause they believed in. I don't know. And that bothers me. 10,000 years of observation, and that one event remains ambiguous. But here's what I learned. Truth doesn't matter as much as belief. What people think happened shapes history more than what actually happened. Christianity didn't spread because of evidence. It spread because people wanted to believe, wanted to think suffering had meaning, that death wasn't final. And 2,000 years later, billions believe, not because of what I saw on Golgotha, because of what they need to be true. I opened my eyes. The prisoner stood at the glass. "That's the story I've never told anyone," he said quietly. "The one event I can't fully explain." "Why tell me?" "Because you need to understand what the ring represents." He pulled back. King Solomon, Jerusalem, around 950 BC. He was obsessed with control, but also obsessed with the unseen world. He studied texts, learned names, 72 names of power, supposedly able to bind entities. So he forged the ring. Bronze, inscribed with those names. 3 years in consultation with scholars from Egypt, Babylon, Persia. He tested it on me first, spoke my true name, and suddenly I was bound. Trapped in a bronze vessel. Sealed for 100 years. Darkness, total. No sight, no sound, no sensation except awareness. Existing without experiencing. When I was finally released, Solomon was dead. His kingdom divided. The ring disappeared. Changed hands. Eventually lost. It ended up in Salem, carried by a woman fleeing the trials. She hid it, died, and it's been there ever since. Why tell me where it is? Because I'm tired, Frank. Tired of this body. This prison. His black eyes held mine. The ring can free me. Allow me to exist without physical form. To observe the next 10,000 years unbound. And what do I get? Proof. Physical, tangible proof that everything I've said is real. He smiled. And you'll have a choice. Use the ring to keep me imprisoned forever, or set me free. Why would I free you? Because you're curious. Because deep down, you understand me. We're both observers. I stood there, processing. Where is it? Salem, Massachusetts. Gallows Hill Road. Old Colonial House, number 237. Abandoned, scheduled for demolition. In the basement, behind the stone fireplace. Remove the stones. Behind them, hollow space. The ring is wrapped in cloth, buried in ash. He pressed both palms against the glass. Go, find it, then come back. Make your choice. 3 days later, I requested time off. The drive to Massachusetts took 40 hours. Salem was surreal. Tourist traps everywhere. Commercialized tragedy. I found Gallows Hill Road. Number 237 sat at the end, hidden behind overgrown vegetation. The house leaned, roof partially collapsed. I broke in through a side window. Inside was decay, rotted wood, mold. The basement stairs creaked. I used my phone flashlight. The stone fireplace stood against the far wall, exactly as described. I worked for 2 hours removing stones. My hands bled. Behind the final layer, a hollow space. A small wooden box, half rotted. Inside, wrapped in disintegrating cloth, the ring. Bronze, tarnished green, heavy. Inscriptions covered every surface. When I picked it up, my hand tingled, like the ring was aware of being touched. I stood in that basement, holding an object that might be thousands of years old. Or it might be elaborate manipulation. Only one way to find out. I drove back to Montana without sleeping. The ring sat in my pocket, warm against my leg. I arrived at Blackthorn at 11 p.m., went straight to D Block. The prisoner was sitting on his bed. When I entered, he stood, walked to the door. I held up the ring. His expression transformed. Something like joy crossed his face. You found it. Just like you said. And now you have to choose. He spoke slowly. The ring works through intention. You put it on, speak with purpose, and it binds or releases based on what you want. You can imprison me permanently, trap me for eternity, Endless nothing. Or you can free me. Release me from this body. I'll be able to observe again. Truly observe. What happens to you? I exist. Unbound. Watching. Learning. For another 10,000 years, maybe more. I looked at the ring. At him. Thought about everything I'd heard, everything I'd verified. I made my decision. I put the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly. I looked at the prisoner. You're free. Nothing happened. No light. No sound. The prisoner just smiled. Thank you, Frank Duncan. You won't feel it, but I'm already leaving. This body is just a shell now. He stepped back, sat on his bed. We'll witness incredible things together. I'll be watching through eyes you'll never see. He lay down, closed his eyes. Thank you for the freedom. Now go. Live. Let me observe. I stood there for 5 more minutes, waiting for something. For nothing changed. 2 weeks passed. Captain Kaplan called. Duncan, prisoner 666 is dead. Found him this morning. Heart just stopped. I thanked him, hung up, looked at the ring, which I'd been wearing under a glove. Had it worked? Or had I witnessed a man die naturally after I performed a meaningless ritual? 3 months later, I still work at Blackthorn. D Block is closed now. I wear the ring constantly. Strange things have started happening. I dream in languages I don't speak. Wake up with knowledge I shouldn't have. I knew the exact date of a minor battle in the Punic Wars. Looked it up. I was right. I correctly predicted an election outcome in a country I'd never heard of. Small things. Whispers of knowledge that aren't mine. And sometimes, late at night, I feel watched. Not threateningly, just observed. Captain Kaplan noticed. Mentioned I seem distracted. Greg avoids me entirely now. Maybe I'm just going crazy. Maybe the prisoner was a manipulative sociopath. But I don't think so. Because one morning, I woke up knowing something impossible. I knew that in 17 days, a solar flare would disrupt global communications for 6 hours. I knew the exact time. I wrote it down. Sealed it in an envelope. In 17 days, I'd know for sure. The solar flare hit exactly when I predicted. 6 hours of disruption. Scientists were baffled. I opened the envelope in front of a mirror, read my prediction, confirmed the match. Then I looked at my reflection. For just a moment, less than a second, I saw someone else looking back. Thin face, bald head, covered in tattoos, black eyes. He smiled. Then my reflection returned to normal. I took off the ring, considered throwing it away. Instead, I put it back on. Because the truth is, I don't want to stop. I want to know what comes next. Want to witness the next 10,000 years, even if only through fragments. The prisoner was right about me. I'm an observer too. And now, we observe together. I don't know if that makes me brave or foolish. Don't know if I made the right choice. But I know this. I'll never be alone again. For better or worse, I have a witness to my life. Something that will remember me long after everyone else forgets. And somehow, that's enough. If you're reading this, I'm probably dead, or missing, or institutionalized. The ring is real. The prisoner was real. Everything he said was true. I can feel him sometimes, watching through my eyes, learning through my experiences. It doesn't hurt, doesn't control me. I'm still myself. But I'm also a window, a lens through which something ancient observes the modern world. The psychiatrists were right to be afraid. Knowledge like this changes you. But I wouldn't change my choice. I freed him, and in doing so, I freed myself from the mundane. From the belief that this is all there is. Now I know there are observers, witnesses, things that exist beyond our understanding, watching us, learning from us, remembering us. And that knowledge makes every moment matter. Because somewhere, something is watching. Something is remembering. Something will carry our stories forward long after we're dust. That's not comfort, but it's truth. And truth is worth any price.